Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
Hey guys, we're back. We are a trio today instead of a four. It's Tyler, me, Aaron, and Mark Baxter. Mark's a police officer on the East Coast, and he also owns a company called SureScan. And I do want to touch on some unique things that he has going on, like his shipping container pool. But Mark, thanks for hopping on. I know we've been talking about getting you on here for the last, year or so. So thanks for hopping on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always good to chop it up with you guys and try and give the community something to think about.
Yeah, man. So you have been a police officer for how long?
It's about 23 years now. The same agency.
Same agency. And you want to branch out from there, started when? Because I know you're kind of in a unique niche in your department. So when did you decide to kind of pursue that avenue?
I decided that in about 2018.
Okay.
And it sort of just fell in my lap, I guess. I was looking for, I guess a little background. I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit and was trying to find something to work for myself and not for someone else ever since I was before I was a teenager. And then in 2018, I was just trying to figure out, I got five or so years left. What do I want to do when I retire? I don't want to wait till then to decide. So I had a bunch of different options, and then this just happened to come my way. And I'm like, why not use my experience to try it out? It was just like a trial thing. So I tried it and it sort of took off. So that's why I'm with it now still.
So what came first, the chicken or the egg, the company or the niche in the police department?
I've had this position for several years, so that came first.
Okay.
And then, prior to being in the police department, I worked in the same industry. It's basically, the ID checking, ID features sort of thing. So I was bartending and in the restaurant industry doing all that before I had this job. So that's what gave me a lot of the experience. And it gives me a lot of, street cred, I guess you'd say, with the people that I'm enforcing.
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, because I've been in their shoes. So, I've been in the same, even though some of the things I look back and say, I don't know if I would allow that, but that was 25, 30 years ago. So I think
different man, different times.
That's right.
So Tyler and I were talking about this before. We're looking at kind of niche things that people get into, and this is one that kind of stuck out. And he came to the open house first responder thing we did in College Park. Mark came and took a bunch of notes. So I appreciate you coming out there and supporting us. This is I guess about a year ago now. But the SureScan thing is it's obviously has to do with scanning IDs and whatnot, but you also do aviation stuff, right?
Yeah, I do stuff with drones. So I've been into that. I've always been into radio controlled vehicles. But once I started getting into the, aerial thing, that was probably 2014. And then as I was doing that, I realized how beneficial it could be for public safety. And that's sort of right before it started taking off. Well, no pun intended, but right before it started taking off. I always have to say that, but I didn't catch myself that time. So I started looking into it and really doing a lot of research, and I helped our agency get ours started. And then now it's just it's almost odd if your agency doesn't have something or you're not looking into doing it soon. So that's to give you an idea. That's what I was doing before SureScan. I was trying to have a drone business doing photography and things like that. And I also wanted to do it for help public safety agencies set it up because I did have experience with that. And I was basically doing SureScan because that opportunity came to me. And I was like, why not do that until this drone thing catches on more? And then it ends up taking its place because, to make any money in the drone industry, you got to do a lot now because it's just not worth $75 to go out and take pictures of a house when I have to drive an hour to get there.
So let's talk about, you go ahead, Tyler.
No, so that's interesting, right? Because you started off wanting to do something. You thought SureScan would be like a backup, and then it flipped. And I've done a lot of things like that. I'm sure Aaron has too, where you think you're going to go in one direction, then all of a sudden something else takes off. And it's not that like you said, not that the drones wouldn't work, but you saw more opportunity in SureScan, I'm assuming, than, like you said, taking $75 drone footage. And I think a lot of the time, sometimes when we fail, it's because we're not willing to adjust. I like that you adjusted and just kept pushing forward. Do you think that you would ever revisit the drone stuff, or do you think that with SureScan, that's kind of, it sounds like that's more of a passion thing, and SureScan is more of like a business operation?
I mean, I still have, I don't have that, I guess you'd say. I just, consolidated all these LLCs into one. So I operate them all out of the one. I haven't really done much with it. I used to do training, but I haven't done that probably a year, just because I've been so busy with the ID stuff, because it's taken off so much, and going around doing a lot of training.
Let's talk about the drone stuff in the first responder realm, because I don't think we have that in our department. And I'm sure that we got one of the agencies does, but I'm not sure who or why. So why would somebody have drone coverage in their department? What purposes?
As far as like law enforcement, if you have like a missing person, or like a developmentally disabled person that's, wanders off, or even a child. I've been on so many calls where the child wandered away from the house and we had to go look. And it just covers a lot larger of an area. You also have, if there's a, a car accident, it's good for mapping car accident scenes. So if you ever go to court, you actually have a, orthomosaic map, and it's all real time 3D. You can zoom in. It's amazing the software they have for these things. And this was, 6 years ago they had this. It just keeps getting better. So those are the main things I think that we've used them for.
So how about the fire department? So I've seen guys use it for like wildland firefighting, looking up for hot spots. Instead of getting a helicopter out there and like flying around and trying to figure out where the brake lines need to be and stuff like that. I've heard of guys using the drones instead, because it's faster to get it up in the air and out with less potential risk to get them out there. Do you know anything else other than like the benefits of a drone business for first responders?
I mean, I've actually helped our fire department with scenes where I'd fly over after the fire, or while they were, I guess, checking for hotspots. I don't really know what you guys do, what you call it, but
mitigating.
I've flown over just to document the scene for the fire departments, as well as, I have seen to where you would use thermal to be able to see heat signatures of people inside that you can't see through the smoke with your naked eye. So I've seen cases where that was more of a testing where they showed how that is possible. But I mean, I just think, especially nowadays with artificial intelligence and all that, there's just so many different things that people haven't even thought of yet. And the one thing that I'm trying to do for my agency is do what they call drones as first responders, to where we would actually send a drone when we get a call, because they would get there first, and then it could size up the scene and let the responding officer know, can you slow down? Do you need to speed up? Do you even need to come at all? Is it a gun, or is it just somebody holding a lighter? Something like that. So that will help save lives, as well as, the whole staffing issues and, being able to find qualified applicants and people who want to do the job.
Through our mutual friends, I've heard all about that one.
Yes.
So the drone thing. So did you ever look at training the trainer, like that option for the other departments?
Well, I've teamed up with a company that does government contracts, but they sell to a lot of law enforcement and public safety agencies. And I was training for them. I was like a subcontractor for them, which I did through my drone company. And then they would send me around, and I would do training for the agencies and train them. I did a few of those, but it got to the point where, $250 isn't really worth my time, because it costs more than that to take leave from work. So, it got to that point, which I still love doing it and training, but I'd rather just do somewhere local and just go there, come out.
It's hard to rob Peter to pay Paul. Like, take money from your left pocket and put it in your right pocket. And it's like, if I'm going to lose money
in a job,
so I lose money by leaving your W-2 and then going somewhere just for your passion. Like, it's a nice thing to have. Like, I've had the same thing. Like, hey man, did you come out and do, CPAD training or build programs or whatever it might be? But you need to take your own leave to go do it. And I'm like, well, if I lose we'll say $100 a day, like, is it worth my time to do it? No, it's not. It's absolutely not. So I know I'm picking up what you're putting down. We'll say that. So
it's sort of like, if you have to burn the leave anyways, then it makes it a little more digestible, because, if you just have to, if you're going to lose it, you might as well, you're still getting paid. So you get paid twice. But if it's something to where you have to, you could use that for a vacation later on, then it ends up being in that situation.
Yeah, I'm always wary too. Like, I feel like stuff like that, like, I would pick up stuff like that, and I feel like I'm just creating an extra job for myself. And do I really want to do this? And what is it like furthering? I used to do, I think I told Aaron a while back, I used to do BPOs, broker price opinions, for a lot of lenders and agencies and stuff like that. But same thing, is it really worth my time? And do I really want to be doing this? And at least for the purposes of like what we're talking about today, it's like, does this really further what I want to do? And train the trainer, I'm sure you enjoy the drones. I'm sure you enjoy training, but like, is that really the best use of your time, I guess? And if you got to burn leave, I know for us, most of us here, or all three of us here, you're going to be losing money in that sense. And I don't know. It's tough for me. Like, when you started the drone business, I'm sure what you could command as far as prices was much higher, right? Because there wasn't as many people doing it.
Right. As long as they, the people requesting it were getting people who were certified, because that was the big thing, was people were doing it illegally because they didn't go get their drone license through the FAA, which I did the first day it was available. So,
there you go. I didn't know you needed one.
Yeah,
there you go. I learned.
Well, a lot of people didn't know. So,
it's small world. My old neighbor at one of my old houses, she was in charge of that whole program. So we used to sit out front and talk about it. And she told me one day, she's like, all you do is put your application and it comes right to me. She's like, honestly, you can just hand it to me and I'll probably sign off on it. I was like, small world.
Yeah.
So anybody who's wondering, the FFA is the Federal
Aviation Administration.
Yes, Federal Aviation Administration. Thank you. I'm drawing a blank there for a second. And they're in charge of overseeing the drone licenses that you can fly in and out, and where you can't. So obviously there's certain places you can't, like Area 51 or above the Pentagon or places like that. So if you're thinking about getting into the drone business, look at the rules, regulations, and laws pertaining to them before you decide to go out and just fly these things anywhere. And that's my firefighter giving police advice.
There you go. Exactly.
FAA.gov/U8S.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
And then we're gonna have some people think that you're a UFO, and depending on where you're flying it, so make sure you're not getting shot down.
It's crazy out here. Drones. When we paid the guy, we had to pay the guy $1,000 to do a photo shoot for a house. It was included in his package, but I was like, damn, this is crazy. But that was a long time ago. I'm guessing that was before a lot more people could do it. I remember paying $1,000 to have like the flyover footage, and then all of the like the huge the photos and stuff like that. At that point, I was like, dang, I should teach my kid how to fly a drone. And so when he gets older, because he loves stuff like that, but it sounds like everybody's hopped on that bandwagon.
Well, it depends on who you get hooked up with. I mean, I was hooked up with a couple companies who they would send me a job. I would take the footage and send it to them. So all I had to do was fly and hit the button.
Nice.
But, when I was doing it myself, I had to take the footage. I had to take it home. I had to edit the video. I had to edit the photo. I mean, it wasn't worth, I started getting to the point where how much can I make an hour working overtime at work versus doing this? And yeah, this is probably more enjoyable, but, sometimes you have to, I think you always have to start factoring that in once you get a lot of years under your belt, because your overtime rate goes up. But I always look at doing things and whether it's worth it, with that formula.
I have a friend of mine who does woodwork. He does a lot of like plaques for people, police, fire, military, and he does a lot of epoxy pours. And the epoxy pours, the time it takes to do all the stuff is like, we'll say 6 or 8 hours once you sand it, cure it, polish it, and everything else. And he got to the point, he's like, what's the point of me doing this where I can just go work overtime at the firehouse and make just as much money and do less work? He's like, it's a what's your $1 per hour worth in your free time? So I think it's a thing that a lot of guys don't know. They have a passion that they want to do, and then it gets to the point where it becomes a job and they don't enjoy it as much as they used to. I was the same way when I used to work on motorcycles. I loved working on motorcycles and bikes. And once I started working at a motorcycle shop before the fire department, I was like, this sucks. Like, I hate working on people's bikes now. And I'm jaded to the point where I'm like, I don't even want to work on my own bike anymore. It's just one of those things it's you got to find out if it's worth your time, energy, and money, or effort. So let's talk about SureScan. Give me the crux. Give me the elevator pitch of SureScan, what it is.
So it's basically the SureScan is a company that I created that helps government agencies and retailers combat fake ID use. And it can be for a myriad of reasons, whether it's underage drinking, which is the typical one you think of, but also fraud, terrorism. It could be anything. I mean, that's the first thing that we as law enforcement ask for anytime we come into contact with someone is you have your ID. And if you don't know what you're looking for, how good is that to you? So what SureScan is, it's basically training as well as technology. It's an app that I'm a reseller for that can authenticate IDs in a matter of seconds. And it's what it does, it authenticates the barcode format as opposed to just reading the ID and trying to calculate the age based on the date, which anything can do. Lottery machines do that. So that's how it differentiates from pretty much all others. There might be a handful of ones that will do that, but.
So if I were to use, we'll give a setting. So is this police agency stuff? Is this getting approved by a gun? Is this for a police officer use in his police vehicle? Is this everybody? Like, who's going to use this?
So it's geared towards like law enforcement doing it for their job. It's geared towards in other states, not Maryland, basically, it's alcoholic beverage control agencies. Because if they go do a bar check and they have a bunch of people in there, they're not going to be running 20 people through dispatch. The dispatcher's not going to be too happy, and it's going to take forever. It's for retailers, liquor stores, bars, restaurants, pretty much anyone that requires a valid form of ID and to know that it's valid, because there are marijuana stores now in Maryland, or cannabis, whatever they want to call it. That's going to be a necessary thing in their business, because they're going to have to keep track of how much one person gets, and that would be from their ID. So that's how that would be helpful, as well as tobacco, but
So a quick story. DC obviously has dispensaries now. Maryland does too. Maryland just became legal recently. And there was a fire and it's like a U-shaped building, and the corner of the U was on fire. So big fire. We walked around the other side, the whole back alley to get to the front. And as I was in the alley, the guy came up to me. He was like, "Hey, yo, is the weed joint on fire?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "It's a dispensary right here, man. Is the weed joint on fire?" I said, "No, man. I think it's the warehouse next to it." And he's like, "Oh, man, I thought this was a good smoke." So then I started looking at the building, and like everything is boarded up. Everything is like welded together. They got security cameras up there. And I didn't even think about it because it's a nondescript building. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So yeah, when you say the dispensary now in Maryland, I thought that's the first thing that came to my mind was that one.
we should have been able to smell it if that was on fire.
Yeah, you couldn't. It was a nasty warehouse. Everything that you don't want to be on fire was on fire.
That's like honey butane. You guys get a lot of honey butane fires where you're out here?
No.
Like how they separate the weed and do the hash oil. Dude, those things are like super explosive and really volatile. And before California had dispensaries, we had I'm thinking of a specific fire where you would actually have like a law office in one of the fires, I'm thinking, right? And then inside that law office, they had built a grow facility. So if you walked in, you'd think, "Oh, I'm in a law office right now." Inside it was a full-on grow house. And then we're on a structure fire, and then the chief afterwards realizes what's going on and all this weed's on fire. He's like, all right, I want everybody masked up. Nobody walking in and out of there without their masks on. But to kind of bring the conversation back, you did make me think of something, and I'm guessing this is the answer. Is so the way you would sell SureScan to like a bar is going to be different than you would sell to an agency. Is there different levels of functionality, like a lot of apps, to where like, law enforcement has access to different data on the ID as opposed to somebody who's a retailer? Or is it, do they all have access to the same functionality?
No, it's the same functionality. It's the same, it's basically the same application, same software. It's just in how they would use it.
Okay.
So how did you get pulled into SureScan? Like, what was the crux that was like, you know what, this is for me. This is the company that I want to represent. Like, how did you get there?
So with my position, that's, counterfeit ID is one of the major responsibilities of mine. And I've been providing training on it since about 2011, 2010. So I've always been an opponent of ID scanners because I know how they used to work, which was all they did was take the date and compare it to the date of that day and tell if the person's 21 or not, and it gives you a big check mark that they're okay. So I knew that, a lot of that false marketing for, their fake ID detectors, and the only reason that would tell you if it was fake is because it wasn't coded right when they made that barcode. So I was always an opponent of that, and my friends knew that all across the country, my colleagues. So they kept sending me all these news stories about this new ID app. And, the first like 3, I basically just didn't even watch it because I didn't have time. And then I noticed they kept sending it. And so I was like, let me watch it. So I watched it, and it was for this technology that I'm a reseller for. And so I reached out, and it's a company called Untitled, which is a very popular very reputable company. So I reached out to them, and I would talk to the guy there, and I had a good feeling about it. So he gave me a demo of it. So I went around and tested it for about 18 months because I knew if I was going to put my name to something, I wanted to make sure it worked. So I ran thousands of IDs through it, and I was just amazed how well it actually worked. And I mean, I was getting at the time probably 8 out of 10. 2 of them might have got through, but nothing's perfect. So it was a lot better than 0 out of 10, which is what, my retailers were doing at the time. Because, you're never going to know every single state, every feature of every single state. Even I don't, and I've been doing this for 2 decades. So, I started telling all the people in my jurisdiction, hey, you need to buy this app. Here's the guy's information. So, 6 months later or so, this was during the time that I was going through all my little list of what do I want to do in 5 years. And I put everything that I've ever done down, landscape business. I'll sell blinds because I had an account for wholesale blinds. Drones, and then I did ID stuff. So he actually reached out to me and said, hey, instead of you sending me all these that I can't keep up with them, why don't you just become a reseller? You can be our authorized law enforcement reseller. So I'm like, all right, I'll think about it. So I added that to my list. And I was like, well, I really want to do this drone thing because I was turning down like ID jobs just because I was very into the drones. And so I decided I would give it a shot. I was like, well, I'm not going to do any in or around my jurisdiction because that doesn't look good. So I'm just going to do ones that are nowhere near here. So that's what I ended up doing. And, my first customer was a state agency out west. And ever since then, it took off. So I wouldn't say taken off, but I mean, I guess it's taken off good for a side job or a side hustle. But that's how I got involved in it. And, it was one of those things where it wasn't really on my radar, but I decided to give it a shot, and it's worked out. So I'm hoping to parlay that into the future.
So anybody who is listening, like you look at the back of your government issued ID, and there should be, looks like a QR code or a scan code or a barcode in the back of it. And that's what he's talking about scanning now. And I think I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think like 4 years ago, Maryland went to a new ID system so it could be scanned correctly. Is that right or wrong?
Maryland went to their new ID in 2016.
Okay.
And it was basically just, a lot of it was the real ID regulations, but it was a more secure driver's license because the one that was around before was just ridiculous.
So if you went to a bar or a club in this area years ago, the guy would have like a little black box and he would take your ID. He would shoot the ID into the black box and it would give him a check mark or an X mark saying that there's a good for the ID for age and not good for the age. I live at college town, so I would see these things pop up once in a while where they just took it, they scanned it in, gave the date, said he's 21 or not 21, and then handed it back. Now it could be somebody who's completely different on the ID, they just didn't care, or depending on what bar you went to, we'll say that.
Right.
So
or it could be just more that makes their money on underage drinking.
Yeah. So this is a little more stringent. It sounds like there's more structure and guidelines to how this thing scans IDs and whatnot. So this is just me being curious for terrorism and stuff like that. Like, how is this negating potential terrorist threats?
So to give you an idea, and it's funny talking about this in some of my classes because I realized how old I am. But when I bring up the Oklahoma City bombing and show pictures of that, no one knows what that is.
That's crazy.
So Timothy McVeigh, he used a fake ID to rent the Ryder truck to blow up that building. So that's how it parlays with that. And luckily that astute officer was good enough to make a traffic stop and ended up catching him. The 9/11 terrorists, they had 63 pieces of identification between them. Most of it was genuine, but they used fake IDs to get that. They were breeder documents. They used those fake ones to get the real ones. So that's how it goes into that. And of course, anything else you can think of below that, I don't think there's anything much worse than those two examples. So, it goes anywhere from benefit fraud to, fraud, general fraud, returns fraud, and all the way down to, working at a concert venue and they just want to get a drink or hang out with their friends, get into the club.
So it helps lessen the amount of fraud that's on the market by showing that it's not the real person, showing this ID was stolen, how it's fake.
Yeah, it shows that it's a fake ID. It's not authentic barcode. It wasn't issued by that government agency that it purports to be issued by. And it also helps with officer safety because, that's one thing that I remember when I was a young rookie officer was, I was checking out an ID and I ended up, something doesn't seem right, but, I ran it through the computer and it came back valid. So it ended up being a bad ID that was, the guy was wanted for failure to pay child support. And I just felt like, damn, I could have had that guy. And he was just pretending to be somebody else. So, lucky for me, it wasn't like some, wanted armed and dangerous bank robber, but, that's where it can help with officer safety. So you actually know who these people are that you're dealing with. You're not dealing with someone that looks to be safe, but in his trunk, he's got a bunch of weapons.
The fake ID realm, like obviously growing up around the DC metro area, we could go down to Chinatown, go down to U Street or O Street, pick up a fake ID for $20. Like, is that still a thing? Like, are people getting IDs very easily nowadays?
They're very, very much easier. Now it's like the Amazon economy. You just go online and order it and it gets shipped to your house.
That's crazy.
But the problem is they're coming from overseas and they're criminal organizations. So the main thing that I try and stress to these kids when I run into them is they don't understand that when they give their real ID information over to them, they may not do anything with it now, but 7 years later, 8 years later, when they've totally forgotten about it, they're going to start using their information because they have everything. So there's been a lot of cases with identity theft from these kids, and that's the last thing that they're thinking about.
I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, so basically the kids provide the IDs to somebody overseas. Somebody overseas takes the information, stores it, sends them a fake ID to use back home now. And then later on, they have the birthday, their address, the picture, the likeliness, all the information they need to create a fake ID or use online fraud down the road.
Yeah. So what they've been doing is, if I were to order one, they want to know that I'm not, a federal agent or something. So they ask me to send a picture of my real ID. So that's what they have your real ID picture now. And then, 99% of the people that are getting them for, underage drinking, they're using their real names. They're obviously using their real picture, and they're using their real date of birth, except they'll change the year to make them 21. So everything's pretty much the same, but they won't use the same ad. I mean, some people will use the same address, even if it's out of state, which is kind of funny. Because if you know your town, you'll know some places have unique names. But I'd say 99% of them use the month and day of the birth. They just change the year. And that's how I always end up, being able to find how old they really are. That direction.
Gone are the days of going down to like a little mom and pop shop in Chinatown and getting a fake ID in behind the shop.
Or since Tyler's in Vegas, behind holding up that little sign like in Vegas.
Nick Papa Giorgio.
That's the slide I use on my presentation. I was like, gone are these days of just holding up this board in your dorm room and getting an ID. But those weren't any good anyways. I mean, these look identical, if not better than genuines, these fakes that are coming from overseas.
And the SureScan will pick this stuff up.
Yep. Yeah, they'll pick them up because they're not using the authentic barcode format that the legitimate manufacturers use. I don't know how it all works, but it's all this encryption stuff, and there's encrypted digits in there or something.
So I don't know if you've ever run into this before, but we had this issue in DC one time where somebody was I don't remember exactly what the story was, but they had like a Guam ID or a Puerto Rico ID, and they were like, "That's not American ID. I need to get your American ID. Like, this is America. We're a territory of America." They're like, "No, it's a foreign country." They're like, "No, this is my government issued ID right here. Like, this is, I can't remember what country or what province it was or territory it was." But they're like, yeah, it was a big argument. They're like, "Man, just scan it. It'll scan." And this is what comes to my mind when you're talking about SureScan, is like, this has the government issued ID information on it. But yeah, the issues with the fake IDs, obviously everybody, the first thing they think of is going to be, underage drinking, but there's a whole realm of other bad stuff that will happen if you have fake IDs. Like you said, with the Timothy McVeigh bombing, Oklahoma bombing, with the 9/11 massacre up in New York. So what else is the government doing to negate this that you know of, or can you tell us that like information?
I mean, there are other states that they put out. I mean, one example that first comes to mind is states putting out their own ID verification apps, but I've tested them and they don't work. They're not much better than the other ones. And I'm finding a lot of the real ones being scanned and they come back as fake, which is even worse. Because then
I'm trying to have this conversation. Like, I want to ask you questions like, how do I do this? But I don't want to give the answer because I don't want somebody to go out and do that. So I'm like, how do I ask these questions without like teaching somebody how to do bad stuff?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's one thing that, I don't know exactly how it's all done. I just know how to find it. I mean, that's one thing that I've, because I'll sit there, like I have a stack here. What I'll do is I'll sit there when I get a new one, and I'll go through it with a magnifier. Well, actually what I do now, I don't like getting headaches, is I have a high quality photo scanner and I'll scan those so that I can go on my computer and zoom in and I'll find all the security features on genuines that are supposed to be there, because states don't tell you these things, even if you're law enforcement, because it's all a big secret. So I got to find them myself. So I'll then compare those to fakes, and then I'll keep, that's how I keep my database of features. So that's how I can tell if there's like a new one that comes out. But the problem with that is it's just so hard to get genuines. And unless you have more than one, you can't just base it on one seeing it once. You got to have, a confirmation. So I never do anything based on one. It's usually two or three.
So when we talk about like fake stuff, we'll say fake money, there's little pieces of information on money, whether it be like the reflective part of it or like the that line that runs down between the two pieces of paper. IDs have the same thing. Like there's little pieces of information on each state that indicates that it's a genuine ID or not. Is that right?
Yep. There's quite a few, and there's many. So the way that it works is a company will offer, say, they'll offer up to like, it's almost like features. They'll offer 20 different security features, and the state will pick which ones they want. And then, of course, each one costs a certain amount of money to incorporate, so they don't get all of them. And then, it's all a cat and mouse game, because the government comes out with something good, and then the counterfeiters eventually catch up, and then it's time to get a new license, and then it's back to, chasing us again. So,
and every state is different in the 20 items that they have on the IDs.
Oh yeah, every state has different things, and that's why it's so hard to know, because there's probably 100. There's over, I'd say now, probably 110 different versions of state IDs, because some states have more than one in circulation currently. And then if you factor in the different versions, like you have vertical, you have learner's permit, you have commercial, so there's like over 300 and some different ones of those. So that's why I tell people I don't expect you to know everyone. The key is just knowing the ones that you see most often and then learning those. Because, in being from Maryland, there's not a lot of people don't use in-state ones. So you're not going to have that ease all the time of just pulling your license out and comparing it. But surrounding states, you just get to know what features those are supposed to have, and that's how you can compare them.
Yeah. So being in Maryland, like I'm right there with you. Like we've got DC, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware. They're our border states. Pennsylvania, they're our border states. And then because we have 95 running through our jurisdictions, we have people coming up and down from the northeast all the way from Florida. So we have, like, for policing, you guys, when you make traffic stops on 95, 270, all these major metropolitan areas, you have virtually anybody you can think of on the East Coast to have their state IDs. And then we have people coming in from all over the world in the Washington, D.C. metro area from every country possible. So they have their own IDs that you guys have to learn. And that's a big headache for you guys to have to deal with, because gone are the days of taking an ID, getting a black light and scanning it and be like, oh, yes, it's a real one. Here you go. Thanks. Mm-hmm. You have to actually go through a little more circus show and dance to make sure these things are real. These are things like I don't really think I've ever thought about this as much since meeting you with SureScan. And a buddy of mine, I think he's got live scan at his gun shop. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, how does this work? And it's very similar to what you have. It's just verifying the ID before you can get approval to purchase a gun.
Right.
It's interesting that these things are the nefarious reasons that people will have IDs. Like, it doesn't really come to the forefront because it's just not a talked about topic.
Do you guys sell to notaries or anything like that? Is this involved in real estate? Because I'm thinking there's a ton of real estate fraud. Oh, the person sent me their ID. I guess you still have their fingerprint, but at that point they could already be gone. Do they have any application in that area at all, or no?
Yeah, the main company does. I don't know about notary, but as far as like online verifications, they do that. I don't get involved in that because mine's more hands-on, the law enforcement side. But if notaries, were to check an ID, it'd be good if they had it, because they would be able to tell. But I don't know how many are. Most of them are probably online now, and they do the whole selfie thing where they then compare or something. I don't know. I've been wanting to do a lot of stuff with this app, and that's where I'm trying to expand, because I am a reseller of someone else's software. I don't like being at the whim of someone else, especially when it comes to retiring and basing my future on that. So that's the one thing I'm struggling with now, is just coming up with a way to make this stuff mine, because I have so much information. Like I'm like a data nerd. So I keep a lot of data. It's just I don't know what to do with it. And then the whole AI thing is just blowing my mind. I've spent all my time just trying to learn that and figure out how I can use it, because I get very creative. It's just I get to the creativity part, and then I don't know what to do with it.
As far as the application goes, that's where it's hard.
Yeah, that's where it comes part where there's just so many options that I get overwhelmed with. It's that analysis paralysis, I guess.
I'm looking at the website, right? Sorry, Tom.
No, go ahead.
I was looking at the website it's surescan.us, not surescan.com. for the, if you guys are interested in looking at this and what the demos are and what they can be used for. It's funny that one of the people who left a comment about using the product is the Honey Bar. It's in Deep Creek. That's actually like across the street from where I'm selling one of my properties that's getting listed this week. But it has a lot of information of like retail alcohol, bars and restaurants, regulated products, law enforcement. Like there's different police departments on here that have used it. It looks like Idaho, Fort Collins, Colorado. Who else is on there? Stampede, some company, the Little Nell, Garrett County Health Department. Like there's a whole bunch of people already using this and for this particular app, not just police departments and bars. So it's kind of interesting to see that there's it's also based upon a monthly fee. So do you want to go over that? You may just read it off the website.
Yeah, I mean it's based on a monthly fee, and they can do it by month or annually. And there's prices for, so basically the way that I'm different from purchasing it from the actual company is I offer, number one, my expertise. Number two, I can provide a device if they don't have a device to scan with. Because the one thing I was running into a lot when I first started this were, people that owned a liquor store, let's say, and they worked 9 to 5, and then they got off and, the other employee worked 5 to 10. Well, they got it on their phone. So what happens when they go home? They're not going to leave their personal phone there. So basically the place is unprotected. So that's where I came up with, offering a device that just sits there. All it does is has the app on it, it scans it, and it's always plugged in, always working, as long as they have Wi-Fi. So that's how that came about. And that's something that no one else offers. And I have a lot of sales of those. So that's been helpful for a lot of the clients, especially the bars and restaurants. A lot of the law enforcement already have devices, so they can just put them on there.
So that made me think, you said you're looking for something that's going to be your own, that's separate. Can that, what you just discussed, can that be it? That in that widget or device, whatever it be, can you see that as a long-term possibility to maybe partner up with SureScan and sell those?
Well, I think the problem is that, if that developer decides to cut that app done, make it done, I'm screwed because that's what I'm using. So they're the developer of the app. Everything else with SureScan is mine. Their app is running in the back end. So that's why I sort of want to create my own app to use that in, as well as do some other things that I think would be beneficial. I'd love to do facial recognition, because the hard part is when you get one that's real, but it's not the same person, because that's what takes a lot of time. So it'd be nice to have something that would help you with that, but I just don't think we're there yet as far as acceptance of that sort of technology.
Have you looked into that, like creating your own app?
Started to. I wouldn't say I've gotten anywhere to even know how much that would cost, but I need to figure out what I want in the app first, which is the hardest part, because I know that's what they're going to ask me. So it's just coming up with ideas for that. And I'm actually meeting with a relative of mine, a nephew, who is in his, not early teens, but he's in his teens. So I'm trying to get some different aspect on it. Like, what do you see as being the next big, because that's all they're going to do with that generation is all this technology and AI stuff. So I'm trying to get different perspectives just so I can make it, I don't want to be looked at as, oh, that's that old guy. What does he know? He's back to like checking IDs with a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
But I think I'm pretty up to speed with a lot of stuff. It's just, there's stuff out there that I wouldn't understand, like the whole coding thing. It's like, I don't know what the heck that is. I had to watch YouTube videos on it.
I got an 11-year-old nephew. That's what he wants to do, is coding. I'm like, more power to you, buddy. Like, that's good for you. But there's there's AI now. You mentioned AI earlier. Like, you can go on to different AI websites and tell the AI that you want to write this code, and the AI will write it for you, which is insane to me. So
that's how I got onto that. But
is it?
Well, that's what I decided to look into. It can't be that bad if it'll do it for you. But then it's just like, I'll look for that, and then I'll see all these other ideas, and I'm like, whoa, where was I? What was I doing?
Squirrel, bird, something shiny. All right, what's that over there?
coding or what's this?
Let's talk about some other unique things, because we've had some cool conversations in the past. Like, you did crypto mining in your attic, right? At some point.
Sort of. It was more of just a. It wasn't like your typical Bitcoin mining. It was more of like, I think it was helium. I mean, I still do it. I don't know. I don't follow it. Just sits up there. I'm hoping one day that'll turn into something.
But there's one of the things like
more of a passive thing.
Yeah, and then like you've got a shipping container pool, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we went and tried one of those, and it seems to be working out pretty well. Hasn't lost any water.
So I think that's one of the things that we have in common is that, like, kind of like, oh, what's that? That's kind of neat. Let's try this. Oh, what's that over there? Oh, let's go down this. And you go down rabbit holes. It's like, I want to try this. I want to try this. I want to try this. But you ended up landing on SureScan because it's kind of like, okay, this is tried and true, proven, and I can put my hands on it and I understand it. Like, obviously, you're more, because of your career, you're more in tune with this than you are selling wholesale blinds, right?
Right. I mean, I was always into home improvement stuff, but that just saying that makes me sound like boring. I mean, who wants to do?
It makes my back hurt.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at doing some pavers, like doing a patio, and I'm like, should I hire it out? Should I do it myself? I'm like, how's my back feel before I decide to make this decision? Like, I'm not 20 years old anymore. Like, some things it's you like the idea of it until it starts wearing on your body. Is it repeatable? Is it a repeatable process? And it sounds like SureScan's a repeatable business.
Yeah, I just looked at it as, if I run into issues, what am I have to fall back on? I have my experience. So it's not like a blind company where it's like, how long have you been doing blinds? 3 weeks. When it comes to IDs, I've been doing that for 20 years. So it's, it gives me that level of experience that will help them be comfortable with dealing with me.
Are you going to be comfortable? Do you want to stay with SureScan for the foreseeable future? Do you want to start going into your own app in the foreseeable future? Like, what's the future look like for you for this? Because I know you're retiring in 2 years, and you're kind of like, what am I going to do when I grow up now? What's next?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to keep my company SureScan going, and I do several different things in it. I mentioned before the drones are still part of it, but I also do the training, and that's where I've been doing a lot more recently, is doing training. And I also have been doing videos, video contracts for governments. So that's happened. So that was nice. It's just, I want to take this, the ID scanning thing. I just want to take it to another level to where it's more, what's the best word? It's more just, they can confirm it more, because right now, visual checks are not 100%. Technology is not 100%. But if there's got to be a way in the middle, to meet in the middle, that I can add more stuff to this technology. I'll keep the same SDK for the app, but then if there's still something else that doesn't seem right, be able to pull up a list of certain features. One thing that I was thinking of outside of the app was to market this just to law enforcement, to where I would have all this intelligence I have from all these IDs, and I'd put them in a database. And I don't know if you've ever looked in an ID guidebook, the ones that they give out to restaurants, and you can even buy them. If you look up, say, New Mexico, it'll show you what it looks like. It'll tell you it has microprint somewhere. It'll tell you it has UV. But what good does that do if you don't know where to look for that stuff? So my big thing, and talking to officers that I've been training, the biggest thing is dealing with licenses they're not familiar with, because they don't know what to look for. Even if they look in a book, they don't know where to look. So I do a lot of photography for my presentations. So what I want to do is put all this into like some type of program or database to where I can sell a subscription to that. So law enforcement can pull that up on their computer if they get a New Mexico license, and it'll say microprint, and it'll show exactly where it is and what it's supposed to say and what it looks like. And they confirm it that way. That was a goal like a year ago, and I've been working on, it's just a lot of work because IDs update all the time. So it's going to be a constant thing to keep it updated. That's why I want to do a subscription model, because it's not something I'd want to just sell once and then they expect me to keep updating it, because it takes a lot of time. And the hardest part is getting the ID, because I mean, still to this day, I only have one New Mexico ID that's real, because I don't see them. So no one wants to give them out, even the agencies.
I wonder, I don't have anything. I'm just curious, like how hard it would be to get a hold of them. Like, I just don't know. I mean, I don't even know where to go with this part of the conversation, because I'm in my mind, I'm like, can't you just go to the state and be like, hey, this is the program I want to build out. It's going to show this is the safety aspect of it. You know, can I see your IDs? Can you tell me the updates? You know, here's who I am and here's why. I wonder if they'd be open to that, or even who do you get in front of to get that information?
Well, that's, I mean, just knowing people from the MVA here in Maryland, I mean, even the investigators there don't share information with them. So it's, you know, it's like a big secret with the manufacturers. They don't, you know, they have a high price on the security of their stuff. So it leaves it up to me to find it all. And, you know, I'd love to be able to have officers call me all the time and say, hey, I have this ID. What should I look for? But that's not realistic, you know. And my wife wouldn't like being woken up in the middle of the night.
It reminds me of those video games, or those games that you have where there's two pictures side by side, and it's like find the errors in the picture to the right compared to the picture to the left. Then it gets harder and harder and harder and harder. And then you add on UV lights, and you add on like reflectiveness and whatever else you might be. It just gets harder for you to figure out what it is. It's harder. The good thing is it makes it harder for them to make fake IDs. But at the same time, it makes it harder for you guys to verify that it is a fake ID to begin with. So it's like a catch-22, a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and it's a constant learning, educational thing to, you know, always keep up with the latest, because, you know, states will change stuff and they won't tell you. So you'll see one and you'll be like, oh, that's fake because it's not supposed to be like that. And then you'll find out, oh, they changed it yesterday or a year ago, and they just didn't update anyone. They don't even update their own law enforcement. So that happens a lot.
So is this with this direction you want to go in your retirement days? Is with this for now?
I think so. I mean, I always told myself I want to be flying drones counting buffalo out in Wyoming, but I don't know, you know, that could get kind of boring. I don't like being bored. I always like to be busy, and I'm always looking. I think I'll always look for the next big thing for probably till the day I'm dying. But I'm always, you know, I'm like a sponge trying to soak up as much as I can, but it gets to a point where, you know, I got to stop sometime and actually take action on some of these things.
Would you say that you enjoy education, like you enjoy learning new stuff?
Yeah, I definitely do that, especially if I see a potential in it. Obviously, if it has to do with Shakespeare or something, you know, just like in school, I was looking out the window. You know, I didn't find any benefit in how am I ever going to use that in real life? Same with algebra. I'm never going to use that. So it's come to a point where if I see a benefit of it, I'm all in, you know, especially if it's helpful to, you know, you, me, you know, the community, that sort of thing. I just want to figure it out, because that's one thing I've sort of matured in, is setting goals and then making, you know, I set like lofty goals and I'm like, I want to accomplish that.
What about you, Tyler? What about you? Like, do you enjoy learning still? I think I know the answer to this, but
oh yeah, for sure. And I like the whole process of like tinkering with the process, like learning something new, figuring it out, and then just like, how can I apply it to whatever I'm doing? Yeah, I love it. I mean, like you mentioned AI. I think AI has a lot of good uses, a lot of bad uses, but I'm like, how can I implement AI into my mortgage and real estate business? So I like learning new stuff and then applying it to what I already know. And I don't think I'll ever stop doing that, because I've always been that way. I've always wanted to kind of figure stuff out, add on, do it. And I know Aaron is the exact same way too. It's just fun, and you can't not. When you were saying that, I'm like, you can't turn that switch off. I think that's just who you are. It's like, okay, I gotta learn all this new stuff. And for me, when I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh, well, that'd be cool if you could do an app, kind of like we have for LA County Fire. We have a paramedic app that gives all of our policies, all this stuff, and it's constantly being updated as things change. I think it's like 99 cents a year, whatever it is, right? But original version of it is obviously much different than what it is today. It's been improved, it's grown. So I was thinking like kind of what Aaron and I already know that we'll try something out. Does it work? Does it not work? Tinker and get it better. I was thinking for Mark, I'm like, well, if you could just get a basic app with all that basic functionality out there and say, hey, this is free for right now. All I request is getting your feedback. How can I make this app better? What other functionality do you need? And then you go back because you don't know how to add that. You don't know how to code it. You just got to find somebody who does. And I'm thinking, to your point, or to answer your question, Aaron's like, oh man, I love this kind of stuff, is like taking these two things and merging them together. Like, how can I make this work? And that literally is, I love it. It's my favorite thing to do is how can I take these things and make it work? I'm like, oh man, you can try this, you can try that. I think I'm a tinkerer, just not a mechanical tinkerer.
I think the two most dangerous things that all three of us have in common is we have FOMO and shiny object syndrome.
Yes.
So we have fear of missing out, and then we have shiny object syndrome because we're like, what's this? Let's go down this rabbit hole and figure this out. And then like, well, what's going on over here? Because I don't want to miss out on this over here because this is kind of cool too. And then you'll go down that rabbit hole. And then just like 6 hours later, like, God, like Google must be tired from all the searches I'm doing right now.
Yes.
I always feel like there's a better way to do things that have been done the same way forever. So that's one thing that gets me wrapped up, is just trying to figure out a better way to do this and that. And then it leads me to something else, and then I'm stuck on YouTube watching the video how to do this, and
I like somebody sent me a meme one day. It was a picture of like, you have now reached the end of the internet. Please go back and start again. It's like, oh, that's kind of where I'm at with it. But the amount of information out there now is, compared to when we were kids, like the access to information is there. Like if you want to learn something, whether it be coding or drones or real estate or marketing or anything, you can literally go on the internet and find out anything you want to. It might not be always the most accurate and up-to-date information, but the information is out there if you want to learn. It's the new version of a library, is the internet. And it can be overwhelming, but you have to fine-tune. I say you, I mean anybody listening and myself, fine-tune what you're looking at and don't get distracted by the outside noise. And I do that a lot. Like I looked at buying burial plots last week or 2 weeks ago to flip. And I'm like, this would be cool. And then I went down the rabbit hole of how to become a broker for burial plots. And I'm like, this is not going to be my future. Like I need to ignore that and move on to something I can focus on for the future. Because I'm the same boat as Mark is when we started talking, a couple of years ago, is I retire in 5 years, Mark retires in 2 years. And like, what's next when we grow up? Like I just trying to figure it out. Tyler, you're in the same boat now. Like what's the next thing you want to do? Like, are you going to enjoy it? You tried Amazon sellers for a while and didn't like that. Or what was the other one? Walmart?
Yeah, Walmart and Amazon, and it was good for a little bit and then petered out. And I'm like, it just, my heart wasn't in it. So I'm like, I'm not going to keep pursuing it, but it doesn't mean we can't keep trying new stuff.
Yeah. And Mark was saying like, you'd like to, count buffalo in Wyoming. Is that going to get old for him? Probably, because he's got FOMO and shiny object syndrome. He wants to learn more and he wants to expand his knowledge, which I think is part of being a good person, is just being better yourself. So Mark, let's start wrapping this up. Is there anything we missed that you want to go over before we start wrapping this up?
No, not that I can think of. I think we pretty much covered everything. Just, I had that artificial intelligence in there that I didn't mention before, just because that's something I've been diving into since I talked to you guys last, and I'm still lost. I'm still trying to figure it out. I can understand it. It's just more of how to use it.
It's conceptually, I get it too. Like conceptually, I understand what it is as the concept, but execution, how do I take the concept and execute it in the business? Same thing. I think a lot of people try to figure it out. AI is so new, is like, who do I go to get these answers? And everybody else is, for the most part, new in the same arena as we are. So it's like, this is why we have these podcasts in the group, is like, if you know something, share it. And if you can help somebody else up, then help them up. That's kind of like the crux of our group here, is if you know something more than the next guy does, then give him the information to help him understand it and give him the leg up and the ladder up.
Yeah, that's why. That's the reason I came on here, not because I think I've done something great. I'm just going along trying to figure it out still. But if there's anything that I can do to help anyone else, I'd love to help them. So reach out.
That's from wholesaling blinds to AI to SureScanning. Like, this is the route we're taking.
I think I still have my blind account, but that was pre-pandemic, so they probably closed it. But that was one of those things where I had my drone business was called SkySight. And then, being the frugal person I am, I went to buy blinds for my house and I found who the manufacturer was because I was like, I'm not paying this crazy money. So I contacted the manufacturer and they asked if I wanted to set up a wholesaler account. And I gave them my SkySight name, and I guess they thought that was looking out the window to the sky. So I did blind. Set me up with an account. Not that any of them will be watching this, but I always thought
that worked out in your favor.
Yes, I got blinds for my house for cost.
If you could go back,
notarized ones. They work
if you could go back and like make that a business, do you think you would?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's just boring. It's blinds. I mean, I'm sitting there like I was grasping for straws there. What am I going to do? Blinds? I mean, the money was, I guess there was good money in it, but I even had a couple people ask me about it, like in my neighborhood. That's all new. It was a new development. So anytime someone was building a house, I'd being on the HOA board, I'd be like, hey, if you ever need blinds, let me know. And then, they ended up, I'm like, I'm glad they didn't pick me because then I would have had to come over there and measure. And that's a pain. But going around measuring every window's different. It's never the same.
But information out of there is going to be, if you needed to make money, and if you wanted to make money and you needed a side hustle, you can go be a blinds wholesaler for relatively easy to start a business if you wanted to. Just getting approved to do it. And then if you want to be that person to go out and measure the length and the width and the distance and the types and the way it opens and closes, all stuff like that, opportunity is there. And if all else fails and you you lose all your toes and all your fingers and you can still hold a tape measure, there's something there that you can do. You can sell blinds. You can wholesale blinds.
I mean, my philosophy has always been, I can do anything I want to do. It's just a matter of putting my mind to it. And that's why I think my business, SureScan, hasn't taken off as much as I would have liked it to, because I know I have a full-time job. But if I know if this was the only thing that was feeding me and supporting my family, it would be out through the roof. So that's what I'm also grasping with, is I just don't have the time, because, my main job, my full-time job is my priority. So.
Yep. Bandwidth and capacity. I always say that, like, there's only so much attention you can devote to items and things when you have something else pulling your attention away. Like for me right now, my son is taking all my bandwidth and capacity, where a lot of people are like, hey man, what do you think about this property? What do you think about this property? And I'm like, I got wholesalers messaging me. I'm like, I'm just not interested. I'm at my wit's end for what I can focus on right now. I can't do anything else.
So it's artificial assistant.
I do. I need to hire a bot to run my life and business for me. All right, Tyler, you got anything else on here that we missed?
No, I'm glad Mark hopped on. It's been fun talking with you. And like he said, just everybody hop on the group and share information, and then rising tide raises all ships, right? So
actually, one more thing. If Tyler, you move to the side, Tyler's in Vegas right now. He's live in Vegas. And if you're watching this on YouTube, he's got the sphere in Vegas behind him right now. It's a big beach ball. And talking about data and information, like if you get a chance, just you want to go down a rabbit hole like me and Mark do, just look up the sphere. It's a $2 billion project. Todd, can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's like an event center, right? It's created in Vegas to stand out and be like this focal point, and they spent like $2 billion on it, and it's crazy. It has all these LED lights on the outside. It changes from like a basketball to an eyeball, and they have like this proprietary camera system that does all this. It's insane. So I just found out last night, the next one's going to go in London, and they're going to go throughout the world, and now a bunch of them all throughout the world. So it should be pretty interesting. But speaking of YouTube and going down rabbit holes, there's all kinds of YouTube videos on this thing. It's pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah, I just sent one to Mark on Facebook so he can watch it when he gets off here. I figure I'll waste some more of his time and
there you
give
go.
him that. But it gotta go. So like, if you can dream it up, you can make it happen. And that's kind of what Mark's saying. Like, if you can think about it, as long as you have the time, energy, and money to do it, then you can make it come to fruition. So Mark, if you can go back and give your younger self any advice, what advice would you give yourself? It could be 5 years ago. It could be your childhood, whatever.
I guess try and make more connections. Because I think prior to the pandemic, I was always more of like, introvert, want to be just leave me alone. That's why I moved way out here in the country. But, now being business minded, I see, and it can still happen living out here. It's not like anything to do with where I live, but, just having people around you that think like you, because I'm always struggling with, and that's probably why I always call you up, Aaron. Hey, you want to go to lunch? Because I'm always trying to find, it's like I get this feeling where I got all these great ideas, but people don't understand me. I just want to be, because what was that saying? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And, it's like, I always think about who did I spend time with today? I sat in my cubicle, and I ran into someone in the bathroom, this and that. So it's like just getting out there more and not being so shy or afraid. Because it's funny thinking about me getting up in front of people and instructing them. I love that. It's like a high for me. Whereas before it was like, that was like death, it's like, no, I don't do that. Now it's just like, I get butterflies just because I'm excited to do it. So it's just, I just to be sure.
I actually went to my old alma mater, my high school, and I told them, I was like, hey, have you guys ever thought of doing programs where you have people who graduated come back and speak to the students? And they're like, oh, we all can't get people to speak in front of. I was like, I don't know. I was like, in my class alone, we got doctors, I got lawyers, I got, people who are real estate investors, I got people who work for the government. Like, a lot of guys will be happy to come back and talk to the kids and say, you have options, because nobody ever did that for us. And if you had asked us, 20, 30 years ago, before we graduated high school, like, would you go up and speak on stage? Probably not. But now that we're established adults and we're into our careers, you can get a handful of people that can come do that because they like helping other people. And that sounds like the same thing as you enjoy, like, here's what I have to offer. Let me teach you. And that you can get the feedback from it. It shows your maturity as a human and as a person. Is I am to the point now where I'm confident in my abilities and my capabilities. So let me share with you what I have to offer. And people who are in that group who are receptive to it, they're going to be your biggest cheerleaders and advocates to see you better, to get better and move yourself forward. So my hat's off to you for doing it.
I think the key is just knowing that you have something to offer, and it's almost like you'd be remiss not to, just because, I have this information, you should have it, whether you want to take it or not, and being firm that and confident that, it is good information and knowing what you're talking about. Because that was always a thing for me is, presenting on something I have no idea what I'm talking about, because that's where it gets scary. But
yeah,
you know what you're talking about, it's easy. It's just like talking back and forth to somebody.
Is that if you can't win them with wisdom, bath them with BS. So you're at the point now, like, you have enough wisdom in you where you can be like, here's my presentation. I am going to take you up on that lunch after my offspring gets a little older and I can have a little more energy and focus. And then anybody listening, if you can get around other guys and have like a roundtable discussion, like have a group of like 5 or 10 people and try to meet up every couple of months, once a year, once every other year, and just say, hey, what are you guys working on? Like, let's sit down. And even if you can get a core group of a couple of guys just to have this conversation, I think it'd be beneficial. It's going to take a long time, especially if you have FOMO and shiny object syndrome, to get from point A to point B. But like, it's gonna benefit all of you guys as long as everybody brings something to the table. So I am open to having lunch. Just give me a couple months or a couple weeks.
And don't be afraid to mix the professions, because yesterday I just went to lunch with a fire marshal friend of mine. We talk about stuff. It's good to have different perspectives.
It is.
So,
it is. All right. Tyler, you got anything else? Mike or Mark, you got anything else?
No,
sir. That's it. Thanks for coming on and talking. You've satisfied my craving for companionship for the day with like-minded people.
And we got our podcast under wraps. Now I can stop hounding you on it.
Nice.
Yeah. Now you'll probably have to keep saying, no, you were just on. You were just on 2 weeks ago.
All right, guys. Thanks for spending an hour and change with us. Mark, if they want to reach out to you, how would they do that?
How do you want them to reach me at my email? Mark, M-A-R-K, @SureScan.us. That's the best way, or I'm on the group. They can reach me on the First Responder Financial Freedom group.
So if you guys want to learn how to make fake IDs, call Mark.
I don't know how to make them. I know how to collect them.
Collect them and scan them. All right, guys. Thank you, and we'll talk to you here soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.